to Cinema Wellman. I'm your host, David, and today's episode is titled Cinema Wellman versus the Academy. The Academy Award nominations were just announced, so this is a good time to look at some of their past transgressions. What we're going to look at today are undeserving Best Picture winners. And we're going to go through several years where the Academy made mistakes. Now, I've seen all but 3 movies nominated ever. I've seen all the winners. I have seen all of the nominees except for 1928's The Patriot, East Lynne from 1931, and The White Parade from 1934. Now, only about 1/3 of The Patriot still exists, and the only surviving complete prints of East Lynne and The White Parade are within the UCLA film archives. So aside from this trio, I've seen every film ever nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, and a large number of them, in my opinion, are garbage. So today we're going to look at some of the biggest mistakes ever made by the Academy. Here's sometimes what they do. They have been known to reward epic, overblown pageantry over substance and style since their inception. They've totally whiffed on classic films that have stood the test of time, while the films they've chosen as the best have been relegated into non-relevance. Also, they are guilty of awarding Oscars to performers and directors decades after passing them by for much better performances and films. I actually have a lot of contempt for the Academy. This from a person who has made it a goal to see every film that was ever nominated for an Oscar in any category. So I guess I can be complicated at times. In some instances, they've overlooked a classic, while in others, they just picked an awful movie to honor when there were sometimes several more deserving films out there to choose from. Now, I have zero beef with the first 11 Best Picture winners. There are no glaring mistakes there during those years, in my opinion. First problem is with the 1940 awards, which are for films made in 1939. So when I mention the years, the year that I mention is the year that the Oscars were awarded, not the year those films were made, just to clear that up. Please keep in mind how subjective all of this is. This episode is probably going to trash some of your all-time favorite films. I do go after at least 3 that I think I'm the only person that doesn't like them. I apologize for that in advance, and I will also remind you that I am not here to debate you, Jerry. So what follows is, to paraphrase the dude, just like my opinion, man. So let's get started. We're going to go with 1940. The winner of the Best Picture Oscar was Gone with the Wind. Better choice would be The Wizard of Oz. Yes, Gone with the Wind was visually spectacular, especially in 1939. It won 8 Oscars. The only one that it deserved was for Hattie McDaniel, supporting actress who became the first African-American to be nominated and win an Oscar. It didn't win for special effects, which were, other than McDaniel's performance, the best part of the film. I think Clark Gable is overrated as an actor. The runtime is just under 4 hours, and it's so racially insensitive, it looks like Song of the South without the music and the cartoon birds. It's so racially insensitive that that idiot clown with the orange hair that used to be president complained when Parasite won Best Picture, saying, "Why don't we honor movies like Gone with the Wind anymore?" What a moron. I'm surprised he didn't reference Song of the South. A more deserved winner, Wizard of Oz, timeless. The music is more memorable than any other musical that I'm going to mention today, and countless versions of this story have been made, but this is still the best. A beloved classic that has spawned a cult following and merchandising beyond belief. So many Christmas ornaments out there for Wizard of Oz, which is odd. In any event, it was much better than Gone with the Wind. Let's move on to 1942. Best Picture winner that year, How Green Was My Valley. Better choices, plural, Citizen Kane, The Maltese Falcon. This is one of the worst choices ever. 2 classic, beloved films were passed by to honor a movie that few people remember at all. I admit that it's difficult to gauge a classic in the moment, but how on earth do you vote for a movie about Welsh coal miners over Charles Foster Kane and the stuff that dreams are made of? How does that happen? In this case, I'm sure the Academy's hatred slash jealousy of admittedly arrogant wunderkind Orson Welles was a big part of it, but shame on them anyway. Next, let's move on to 1945. The winner of the Best Picture that year was Going My Way. Better choice, Double Indemnity. Double Indemnity is one of the best film noir films ever made. Billy Wilder directed this tale of marital infidelity and murder, starring Barbara Stanwyck, Fred McMurray as a heel, and the always wonderful Edward G. Robinson. I've seen it over a dozen times. Most recently, last month, I enjoyed it just as much, if not more, that 13th or 15th or 20th, I don't even know that number, time that as I did the very first time. It always makes the list when I try to put it together of my all-time favorite movies. It was nominated for 7 Oscars and won 0. Come on, Academy. The winner, Going My Way, was a sappy, bland movie starring Bing Crosby as Father O'Malley. He should have been named Father O'Schmaltzy. And that won 7 Oscars. Bing Crosby won for Best Actor. Bing Crosby could never act. Sing? Yes. Act? No. Inexcusable. Let's move on to 1953. The winner that year, The Greatest Show on Earth. Better choice? Actually, this is going to happen a few times today. None of the other nominees deserved. So they picked 5 films and none of them should have been awarded Best Picture. In those cases, I looked at other films that were were nominated in other categories and looked around to see if there was anything there that they overlooked and didn't even nominate. And in this case, I did find Rashomon. So The Greatest Show on Earth is often mentioned as the worst Best Picture choice ever, along with the next one that I'm going to talk about, actually. That distinction is well served since this movie's horrible. The Academy is once again fooled by sizzle without there being any stake at all on the plate. As I mentioned, none of the other nominees were deserving, but how about being progressive and giving the award to Rashomon? I forgot the Academy was made up of old white men, and they would have died before rewarding a movie that wasn't in English. We'd have to wait 66 years for that to happen, which is mind-boggling. Let's move on to 1957. As I mentioned, a carbon copy of 53. Winner, and it pains me to even say this, Around the World in 80 Days. None of the other nominees deserved, but 7 Samurai. So everything that I just mentioned still stands, including epic garbage being rewarded while ignoring another fantastic film by one of the greatest directors in film history, Akira Kurosawa, and this is a tragedy. And a travesty, whatever you want to call it. It was bad. 1959 is next. The winner was Gigi. And some of these Best Picture winners, even for film fans, you might say, Gigi? Oh, was that creepy one with the puppets? No, that was Lily. And thankfully, that didn't win. Gigi won in 1959's awards, and a better choice was The Defiant Ones. So I can't stand Gigi. It's a romantic comedy in the worst sense of the word. You know that creepy song, Thank Heaven for Little Girls? It was sung in this movie by old-ass Maurice Chevalier to a group of prepubescent girls. It's impossible to look at today. Chevalier should have been put on a list after that. This junk won 9 Oscars. Now, The Defiant Ones was overlooked, a powerful film that took a hard look at race relations in this country by telling the story of 2 convicts, one black, one white, who are shackled to each other. They need to work together and stop hating each other to elude capture. Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis were exceptional in this tense, suspense-filled film. I guess the Academy wasn't ready yet to reward films with strong social commentary, and this chicken shit attitude lasted for quite a while. We have to wait, I think, until the 70s where they even start to go into that department. But first, 1964. Tom Jones won Best Picture. Not the Welsh singer, but Tom Jones, the movie. And again, none of the other nominees were worthwhile, but how about The Great Escape? Wasn't even nominated for Best Picture. Now, Tom Jones is absolutely awful. Here's what IMDb says about it. The romantic and chivalrous adventures of an adopted bastard, Tom Jones, in 18th century England. Adventures, this was a snoozer. Rubbish, as they would say in 18th century England. And to think that they passed by one of the greatest films about World War II, featuring an all-star cast and filled with action and suspense, and that lost to that bastard Tom Jones. IMDb's words there. They said it first. Let's go on in 1965. The winner was My Fair Lady. A better choice, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. You gotta love that Dr. Strangelove has such a long official title. So again, the Academy honors a fluff musical with a tired premise. A man picks up and trains a woman to be presentable, which is always gross, and passes by one of the best pieces of political satire ever made. They had a chance to honor Stanley Kubrick, and they blew it. Kubrick's only Oscar win was for the special effects in 2001: A Space Odyssey. 0 Best Director wins, 0 Best Picture wins. They didn't even have the courtesy to give him one of those bullshit honorary Oscars like the one that they gave Hitchcock after whiffing on his entire directorial career. Don't get me started on Hitchcock. Dr. Strangelove went 0 for 4 in the Oscars that year, while My Fair Lady went 8 for 12, which is mind-boggling. Let's move on to 1971. The winner was Patton. A better choice was MASH. And so again, typical of the Academy choosing this rah-rah, we're the good guys, yay for us war movie that puts a questionable human being on a pedestal in a very shiny film. And they overlook MASH, which was trying to make a point about the horrors of war and gave us an ultra-realistic depiction of what it's like to be in a war. So classic Academy there. Next is 1977, and I am sorry, it's not a terrible movie like some of these others. It just didn't deserve to win Best Picture. And I'm talking about Rocky. And hear me out. I know a lot of people love Rocky. I like Rocky. I don't hate it. I like it. But sorry to all you Rocky fans out there, it's just not worthy of winning Best Picture, especially when it's up against and beats Network and Taxi Driver. Rocky's a decent sports movie about boxing, but they're kind of a dime a dozen boxing movies. And not a lot of them win Best Picture. I think $1 Million Baby did, but that was a little bit more than a boxing movie in my mind. The fact that Rocky beat out these other two phenomenal films, Network, which is scarily prescient and looks at the media, directed by the great Sidney Lumet, and Taxi Driver, Martin Scorsese's visceral look at isolation and obsession in a filthy New York City. Rocky beating those two makes it even worse. And you wonder how this happened. There's no way that Rocky's a better film than Network and Taxi Driver. I'm sorry. Let's move on to 1980. The winner was Kramer versus Kramer. Better choices, Apocalypse Now, all that jazz, Breaking Away, there's a few. For some reason, the Academy in the early 80s was all into family dysfunction and divorce, acting like it just started to happen. Families have always been dysfunctional since the beginning of families. And there's always been divorce. I mean, but these winners, the next two that I'm going to talk about, Kramer versus Kramer, and the winner in 1981 was all about family strife and things like that. Kramer versus Kramer isn't a bad movie. Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep, tremendous, okay? Both Oscar winners for this movie. They were great, but I would have preferred Apocalypse Now, All That Jazz, or Breaking Away being given the highest award that year. Next, let's move on to 1981, where the winner was Ordinary People. Again, not that bad of a movie, but it beat Raging Bull. And it's amazing to me that a film that is considered one of the best films of all time and the best film of the entire decade of the 80s, Raging Bull, lost to Ordinary People. Not sure how this happens. Robert De Niro won a Best Actor role, Oscar for his role as Jake LaMotta. But they had another chance to honor Scorsese, and they passed him by again. Hopefully they don't give him a Best Director Oscar later on for a shitty, lackluster, overrated movie. Oh, wait. All right, let's move on to 1983. The winner was Gandhi. Better choice, The Verdict. This is a puzzler. Ben Kingsley's a great actor. This isn't his best. Sexy beast. Richard Attenborough is a great director. This isn't his best. The Great Escape. And yet this epic, read too long, won 8 Oscars. There aren't many people out there that have this on their list. What are your favorite movies? Oh, Gandhi. Oh, come on now. It's not there. And even critics, you don't hear critics, when they list some of the greatest, Gandhi's not there. And again, good movie, decent movie, but didn't deserve Best Picture. The Verdict won 0 Oscars, and yet it's the superior film in many ways. Once again, director Sidney Lumet is overlooked. He joins Kubrick and Hitchcock as great directors who never won. Paul Newman deserved an Oscar for HUD. He deserved an Oscar for Cool Hand Luke. He deserved an Oscar for The Verdict, yet he didn't win for any of these phenomenal performances. Hopefully, they don't give him a Best Actor Oscar later on for his performance in a shitty, lackluster, overrated movie. Oh, wait. All right, let's go on in 1991. The winner, Kevin Costner, and Dances with Wolves beats Goodfellas. Oh my God, this is terrible. How does this happen over and over again? Kevin Costner cannot act. He is terrible. I have no idea why he's popular. I have no idea why people defend him. He is in some of my most hated movies of all time for a reason. Was this award an example of celebrating movies depicting the white savior? Was the Academy trying to be progressive? Fail and fail. 7, count them, 7 Oscars went to this pretentious claptrap. Overlooked in this is one of the all-time greatest gangster movies ever made. I could watch Goodfellas on a loop over and over and over. It's amazing. The soundtrack's amazing. The story is compelling. The performances are great. Ray Liotta is wonderful. I think his best. And once again, Scorsese delivers a stunningly visceral film. This is up there with The Godfather when it comes to mob movies. Not quite there, but it's up there. And it lost to Kevin Costner. Hopefully they don't give Scorsese a Best Director Oscar later for a shitty, lackluster, overrated movie. Oh, wait a second. How many times is this going to happen? Spoiler alert, a lot. All right, 1995, about to make some enemies. The winner, Forrest Gump. Better choices, by far, The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction. Now, I hate Forrest Gump. I'm sorry. Those of you that love it, that's fine. Again, everything's subjective. I don't know any more than you do other than I hated it. I think it's the most overrated movie in film history. It's close to it. Not only is it not worthy of Best Picture, it's an awful movie. Jenny Curran is despicable. The story is so sappy and stupid, and poor Sally Field as Mama Gump, trading her body for, I don't even want to think about how much I hate this movie. It's so painful to think that this crap won 6 Oscars when superior films, The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction, won a combined 1 for 14 in the Oscar race. This is an absolute travesty. I was going to write and mention more about what makes The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction better, but I'm just too pissed off to finish even talking about it. Next, let's go on in 1997. When the winner was The English Patient, and it beat out Fargo. Seinfeld famously skewered the popularity of The English Patient in a season 8 episode by having Elaine being dragged to multiple screenings of the film, even though she despised it. It made a great point about people being afraid to dislike a movie that everyone else thinks is wonderful. I guess I'm not that afraid of doing that. The English Patient was so boring. 9 Oscars for this junk. 9. And both of the leads lost? How good could it have been? Fargo, on the other hand, runs circles around The English Patient in every possible way. At least it won for original screenplay, the Coen brothers, and the always compelling Frances McDormand as Best Actress. It also totally deserved to win Best Picture. Let's go to 1998 and another film that people go bananas over, and I can't stand it. In 1998, the winner was Titanic. Better choice, LA Confidential, kind of, but then non-nominees, Wag the Dog and Donnie Brasco, I think they're all better than Titanic. So this is another film, as I mentioned, that everyone loves and I despise. Give it all the technical awards. That's fine, but not Best Picture. I think it's unbearable to watch. I remember being dragged to this movie by a friend at the end of its run. He was a huge fan of it and had seen it, 3 or 4 times. And since it was at the end of the run, there weren't many people there. Theater was close to empty. My favorite part was a woman and her elderly mom sitting a few rows behind me. The old woman's loud commentary and questions were way more entertaining than anything that James Cameron was providing for me up on the big screen. During the love scene in the car, the older woman said to her daughter, "What are they doing in a car? I thought they were on a boat." Spot on, Granny. Well done. Now, LA Confidential now carries the Kevin Spacey stink on it, but it's a very good movie if you can get beyond watching him. I haven't seen it since because of that, but it's better than Titanic. Wag the Dog, if you haven't seen it, Wag the Dog is phenomenal. Political satire. And Donnie Brasco, another gangster movie, also better. And they weren't even nominated. Sink, Titanic, sink, and stay at the bottom of the sea. Next, 1999, when the winner was Shakespeare in Love, and the better choices were Life is Beautiful and or Saving Private Ryan. Shakespeare in Love should be included in the list of straight up bad movies to be given the film's highest award. It's pompous, it's pretentious. 7 Oscars. Gwyneth Paltrow was given an acting award. This is unbelievable. It's just crap. On the other hand, Life is Beautiful is a touching Holocaust story that is wonderfully told. It did win Best Foreign Language Film, but was worthy of doing the double and winning Best Picture as well. But we know we still have to wait another 20 years for a foreign film to win top honors. Saving Private Ryan is arguably one of the best war movies ever made, and it won Steven Spielberg his second Best Director Oscar. It's always odd to me that a director could win a win for a movie that he's directed, he or she directs, that's not considered also the best picture of the year. Did the movie just make itself? Not that they always have to match up, but shouldn't they? I don't know. I go back and forth on that, but it always seems odd when the best picture and best director aren't from the same film. Let's move on to more Kevin Spacey stink. The year is 2000, and the winner was American Beauty. Better choice, The Green Mile. So this certainly falls under the category of films affected by the Kevin Spacey stink. But it was overrated back in 1999. It has not stood up at all, especially due to the KSS. Decent film with some excellent performances, but not Best Picture material. Spacey perving on his high school daughter's friend is so much more cringeworthy now. I'm sure Mina Suvari throws up in her mouth every time she thinks about making this movie. The Green Mile is a top 10 prison movie, and it stood up over time, as many prison movies tend to do. It would have been a much better selection as a top film of the year. Great performances, great story by Stephen King, a friend of Cinema Wellman. Next, 2006, the winner was Crash, and here's one of those odd occurrences where a better choice was every single other nominee. Brokeback Mountain, Capote, Good Night and Good Luck, and Munich. Now, I mentioned that I was doing this to a friend of mine, and he asked if, well, you got Crash on the list? And it wasn't at the time, but I included it here because of his suggestion and the fact, as I mentioned, that this is one of the rare time any other choice would have been better. Any other. Crash is easily the weakest. It's non-memorable. It's overblown. I think the Academy was trying to be progressive because it dealt with race relations and stuff. You already missed that. You had chances earlier, and now you're going to do that with this? It was an especially weak effort by the Academy. Next, we have 2007. And I'm probably going to bother some people with this one too. The winner was The Departed. And better choice, again, none of the other nominees, but how about Pan's Labyrinth? Come on, that's fantastic. Now, I think The Departed is terrible. It's a subpar remake of a very good Japanese movie, and just about everyone in it is overacting, especially Nicholson, and it's kind of embarrassing. Not as embarrassing as the Boston accents being used. Even Mark Wahlberg's accent is trash, and he's from Dorchester, Massachusetts. And yes, this is the shitty, overrated movie that Martin Scorsese was finally awarded his first and only Best Director Oscar. Not for Mean Streets, not for Taxi Driver, not for Raging Bull, not for The King of Comedy, not for Goodfellas, not for Gangs of New York. He won for this. We're still a dozen years away from foreign language film winning Best Picture, but Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth should have won the honor in 2007. Now, I have other beefs with Best Picture winners, but I'm just going to end it here. I think that's enough for today. I absolutely hated it when they increased the field of Best Picture nominees to 10, and I have so many complaints about some of those winners, but I've ranted enough for one episode. I think the worst thing the Academy ever did was enlarge the field, and they only did it for one reason, and that's to make more money. And there's no other reason to do it. They're guilty of that, and everything else that I just mentioned. Let's do better this year, Academy. Special thanks and shout out to my good friend, my non-movie guy friend, who suggested this episode. He said, you should do an episode about movies that everyone loves or movies that won awards that you don't think deserve it. And it was a great idea. And thank you for that. And once again, he proves to me that he actually is a movie guy, no matter what he says. Our next episode is going to be the first in an ongoing series of what I'm going to call City Spotlights. And I'm going to look at films that were filmed on location in cities. And the first one that we're going to look at is going to be San Francisco. So I hope you'll join me for that little visit to Cinematic Frisco, and for all the upcoming episodes here at Cinema Wellman. Follow us on Instagram and the Twitter. And I'll see you in San Francisco in a week. Until then, take care.